Let's try that again. This is what happens. Everything just gets blown out completely, and it's just so great. I love this system. And now my dogs are going to bark because my wife's home. So let's try this again. Welcome to Jacked Ramsays, Danny Marang. There we go. Sorry, my dogs are completely losing their minds. I don't know how well that's coming through. I'm sure this makes for extremely great content. Let's try this again. I have some editing work to do now. Fantastic. All right. The Portland Trail Blazers have played 2 basketball games. We will dive into those and some questions you submitted. It's Sunday night, and I guess dive right into it. I went up to Seattle. Made the drive up there, left at 5 o'clock in the morning, which maybe not my best idea, but hey, got up there for shoot around, got to see everybody kind of getting ready for game day, the normal ups and downs of the season. It felt good to be back. Mildly newsy. I shot a little video of Shaden getting some shots up. He was, I would say, in good spirits. So I got to talk to him a little bit in the locker room before the game. I was like, so, hey, what's going on? How you doing? He's pretty confident he's going to be closer to the timeline. Now, whether or not that actually happens, yeah, I don't know. But he was not, I would say, last year when he was dealing with the core and the groin injury, he was not optimistic. I'll say that. This time, I think he's a little optimistic. We'll see where things go. Rob Williams III was getting up and down the court, really testing it out. I would say probably running 3/4 speed or a little bit faster, side to side. Start stop, turning corners. I would imagine these are part of the things he has to mark off. Like feels 100% before he can make the return to play. Just listening to him and talking to the trainers and stuff like that, it was pretty evident that he's getting pretty close, I would imagine. I don't think he'll play during the preseason, but I think that there's a pretty good chance he'll be available opening night. And I guess I'll just get this away because people are talking about the hair. Yes, the hair is getting very, very, very long. If you're listening on the podcast, no, you can't see it, but no, the lettuce it's long. It's getting really long, to the point where I have to have a headband to keep it off my face if I'm working out. So it's not quite long enough to go man bun. We're getting there. It's a terrible look. My wife hates it, and it's fantastic. I think that's actually making me like it more. I guess let's dive into the game. First game against I keep wanting to say Seattle Supersonics because we're in Seattle, but they played the Los Angeles Clippers in a game that I think the best way to describe it was probably mildly disjointed. Neither team could shoot to save their lives. I think that's pretty normal for preseason. For the Clippers, James Harden got in there and he did James Harden things. He just directed and got wherever he wanted. Derek Jones Jr. looked really good for the Clippers. Kai Jones had some moments for the Clippers. But other than that, I think it's kind of like what you're expecting. It's going to be a weird season for the Clippers. But this is a Blazers podcast, so Portland Trail Blazers rolled out a starting lineup of Chris Murray, Scoot Henderson, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Toumani Camara. I had heard through camp and from the other players that Tu was having himself a camp yet again. He has come back. He has said, I think publicly, he put on about 10 pounds, and it's very clear he's put on 10 pounds. He's pretty cut. It's one of those, he found, this is what it means to be an NBA guy. And the growth he has shown just physically alone, okay, let's see how let's see how this goes. And it doesn't mean he's fundamentally changed his game. It's just you can see he's got the grown man body. He's got the confidence. He has an understanding of his role. And it's a lot more coloring inside the lines. Every now and then he colors outside of it. And I think I think that's something that's going to be interesting is like when he experiments. And I really want to look at how often he kind of becomes a quote unquote habitual line stepper. And I think that's going to be something that's good. Like, he knows that his job is to be a play ender. I always had this discussion early on about Wes Matthews. And with Wes, he's like the apex version of this. And this is not normal. And I want that to be very, 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 very clear. Wes came back every season adding something to his game. Like, every single season, there was something different. It's like, oh, now he can attack closeouts. Oh, now he has a post game. Oh, now he can actually create shots for his own. Like, it's not just oh, God, let's try and figure something out. There was just a lot there every single season. There was something new, something interesting. I want to see what that is from 2 now, because so far he is shooting the ball extremely confidently, and he's also attacking the rim more confidently. Now, he's kind of deviated outside of the realm with some of his playmaking. I like to see him experiment. I like to see that, like knowing when you can and can't try certain things. Like, sometimes you need to see something fail a couple times before you're like, okay, I can't do that. And I think that's the thing that I'm really interested in seeing from Toumani. I guess a simple way to go about this is I don't really necessarily care about the box score stuff, but his production was pretty overwhelming even before you got to the end of the game. I mean, he in the first quarter alone, what was it? Finished with, 3 points, 4 rebounds, an assist, and a block in a 7-minute shift. And I was like, oh. His activity was just all the way up right out of the gate. And you just felt him. You felt his physicality. You felt like what he was trying to do. Everything had a directness to it. And I really, really, really appreciated that, because it looked like they came out, as you kind of expect things to be, just a little janky for preseason. But I thought he did a really, really, really good job setting the tone. And I think the Blazers are going to need a lot of that this year. They're going to need people who are going to set the tone. And whether or not that ends up actually happening is, that's the fun part about this season. Scoot Henderson started, and he was very bad. There, I said it. Everybody's freaking out. Scoot Henderson has this year really to figure things out. And if he doesn't by the end of this year, and he doesn't have to have everything figured out, but you have to have a clear idea of what he's going to be. Game 1 up in Seattle was not an encouraging sight. He was very bad. He attacked without a plan. Here's the thing. If you take that game and you compare it to the opening night game against the Clippers last year, they looked very similar, except for he wasn't as rattled. Which part of that makes me think, oh, good, he's more composed. But the problem is, all of the other issues were still there. So he was more composed, but still poor shot selection, poor passing, poor passing vision, or delayed on his decision making. Incredibly loose with the ball. Finished with 7 turnovers. Yeah. I finished here. His slash line is 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 fouls, 7 turnovers on 4 of 16 shooting, including 1 of 6 from 3. A positive from the night, he did find a way to get to the free throw line multiple times. He did get downhill. He also did have a nice actually 2 nice finishes at the rim. The problem is he took 16 shots and hit 4 of them. And he was 1 of 6 from 3, which I can give or take that. I'm glad that he's getting the threes up more than anything. But you take the 1 of 6 away, he means he was 3 of 10 on 2s. The 1 of 6 from 3 you can live with. The 3 of 10 on 2s you can't. Because if you're going to be a guy who's an inconsistent shooter, you've got to be a guy who can go to the well for 2s. And so that's the thing he's got to kind of figure out, right? We'll talk about game 2 here in just a minute. But I wouldn't say redeemed himself, but certainly looked better. Also starting alongside Scoot was Chris Murray. And the thing I'll say about Chris is this is going to sound like a backhand, and it's not. He was just there. He was like, he knocked down his shots, rebounded the ball, had a couple assists, had a couple turnovers where I was like, okay. But he was active. He was engaged on both ends of the floor, kept the ball moving, attacked when he needed to attack. Like, he was your very prototypical good role player. And I was like, oh, that's great. It was funny. He knocked down a three, and I looked at somebody else in the media row, and I go, just watch him. And you could see him kind of like puff his chest a little bit. He just peacocks. And I love that about Chris. He's an emotion guy. He wears it on his sleeve. It's one of those things where it can be a double-edged sword, right? It can be a thing that comes back to bite you in the ass pretty hard. But it's one of those things where the emotion can be something that kind of energizes or juices you up, and I like that. But I think he's just a totally fine game. Also starting where the two vets, DeAndre Ayton and Jeremy Grant. Jeremy got to the free throw line, knocked down a three, was productive in his 16 minutes. A little bit of a slow start, and then he kind of got going. DA was DA. Like, I think both those guys, we know who they are. I thought DA was even better. Something that carried forward into game two is he looks significantly more engaged on the offensive glass. Like, that's a thing that appears to be happening. So I mentioned this on Twitter earlier tonight. DA's first 3 years in the league, I want to say he was in like the 80-plus percentile. Actually, I can pull it up. Let's see. Doing this live is always good. I believe he was in the 80th plus percentile in offensive rebounding, and then like the 90th percentile in defensive rebounding. Like, DA's a disgustingly good rebounder, and has always been. But if all of a sudden he's going to kind of revert to being a monster on the offensive glass, that's a big deal. So let's see. So he's in 80th, 90th, and 84th percentiles his first 3 years in the league on offensive rebounding. Okay. So, and that was also being in the 80th, 90th, and 82nd percentile defensive rebounding. So the guy just ate on the glass endlessly, right? His last 3 years on the offensive glass, 64th, 57th, 65th. And if you're wondering, like, what does that mean? It's about a 3 to almost 4% drop in offensive rebounding, which is a pretty significant drop. But if he's going to be a guy who, like tonight, just ate on the offensive glass, then the Blazers can really run, two bigs in Clingan and DeAndre, who, if you don't get a body on them, even if Portland's a crappy shooting team, they can absolutely hammer you on the glass. They can just absolutely hammer you on the glass. And that's a weapon. That's something that teams are starting to do. Now, this is an overarching theme. It happened again today during the game against the Kings. I need to go back and rewatch to see just how frequently it was coming, if and who and where, if there's a consistent theme of who's not doing it, if it's everyone. The Clippers, I keep wanting to say Clippers and Kings and mixing them up. The Clippers hit a ton of runouts. They finished with 16 fast break points. But a lot of it was like zero defense runouts. And it was like, oh my God. Like, there were so many times where ball over top, go. And there's nobody there. And I am all for, sending 5 to the offensive glass. Get crazy. But you have to have a better understanding of that to kind of know when and where you can do that. Your floor balance has to make sense. You have to know your personnel, who does or who doesn't leak out. And you saw a lot of runouts from the Clippers, and I think you saw the same thing with the Kings too. I mean, not I think you did. You saw a lot of the runouts from the Kings as well. So stylistically, I want to see if there's like, guilty parties, if guys are, because here's the thing, if you're going to crash the glass, you're going to get caught with that. And there is a math problem that occurs. Offensive rebounds are worth X amount of points. Runouts are worth X amount of points. And the push and pull between teams about what's the better way to go. Is it better to leak out in transition? Is it better for you to get back? Is it better for you to hit the offensive glass? Is it better for you to protect and keep guys in so they can protect the defensive glass? There's a lot of different calculations that go into this. And they do run the calculations. I remember talking to somebody who said that, there was one team that was monitoring something as simple as passing up an open three and kind of the decision trees that kind of came from that, and like how impactful that was for their offense negatively. And so this whole idea, like, you have to understand what you're giving up, what you're like saying we're going to be the best offensive rebound team in the league. Okay, that's fine if you have the personnel to do it. Number one. Number two, okay, what's the cost? If you're really good at it and you're getting returns of X, but you're giving up, negative returns of Y, there has to be a positive, efficient that comes out of that. Because if they're not, it's not worth it, regardless of how good you are at it. Then you have to be more opportunistic, and you have to kind of fine tune those things. I know I'm getting super, super nerdy, but these are the kind of like trends that I'm watching with the team this year. Making his debut, his official NBA debut in Seattle, Donovan Clingan. His very first shift, he was very much like a high school kid, all just hopped up on adrenaline. Definitely looked like a guy who was at his first dance. Didn't really know what to do. Like, had the wide eyes, was a little too amped. It was very, very, very similar to his first shift in his summer league debut. This is a guy, number one, he's young, but number two, he cares, and like he wants to do well. Following the game against the Clippers, as has been his thing so far, him doing media after losses, he's not a happy camper. I've said it before, and I'll probably continue hammering this. This is a guy, I think, that hates losing more than he likes winning. And I like that. I do like that. But he picked a couple cheap fouls. Chauncey Billups stressed it in the postgame, said that Donovan had his hands too low and was trying to go for steals. Like, I don't want him going for steals. I want him protecting the rim and going for blocks. That's what we want him to do. Don't worry about getting down low, getting in there. He had a very good post-up stint on Ivica Zubac, who is probably one of the more underrated bigs in the league. I mentioned it on Twitter. Like, I need to pull it up, but I believe he's got like one of the most effective hook shots in the entire NBA. He shot an absurd percentage on it the last couple of years. So if he gets that little baby hook turned over his shoulder, it's usually a go-to, but Zoo just couldn't really, like, he ended up getting an okay shot off, but he had to work so hard to get it. And that's where, like, you look at Clingan and you go, okay, good stuff. He did the same thing against Sabonis, not Sabonis, but Alex Len tonight against the Kings. I was like, okay, two very large men who are not used to having people that are that large and will kind of push him back. He did get swapped onto Derek Jones Jr. once in the post, and he didn't look to do anything with it. I kind of went, oh, you can't do that. You've got 8 inches and probably close to 100 pounds. You gotta give a little lean. You gotta look, at least look, and that'll come. That's not a big deal. That was one of those ones put in the notes for later. Didn't look at serious mismatch. Everybody who has their own kind of thing that they want to see out of Donovan this year. For me, it's not getting up to threes, of which Donovan Clingan's first NBA points was a three. He kind of looked around like, all right, let it go, knocked it down. He was comfortable with it. We'll see how comfortable that looks throughout the season. But I just want to see him develop a baby hook or step through an up and under, something. Just give me one singular post move that 6 seconds on the clock, you've got the ball, they're tight, it's taking people away. It's one of those things where I want to see one singular thing develop where he'll take advantage of that mismatch and get a decent shot out of it. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. It's just, let's see what happens. trying to think of what else from night one in Seattle that really stood out for me. I gave a lot of his praise. Ryan Repair. Chauncey Billups in the postgame mentioned that the thing he thought really brought Portland back into the game defensively was Roops picking up full court. And he did. He picked up Bones Highland full court, bothered them, pestered, whatever he could to kind of delay them and stop them from getting into their sets. I really liked what Roops was doing. He had a couple drives. Obviously, Roops is left-handed. He drove left, spun back to his right. I want to say 4 different times. I think he scored twice and then kicked out on one. I really like his development. I've heard a lot of good things about Roops from this summer and kind of where he is right now. I still think he's going to spend pretty significant time in the remix, but not because he's quote-unquote not good enough, but because I don't know how the rotation is going to shake out with how available spots will be for him. I would like to see him get some run. I made no secret. I believe that Roops can be a pretty solid NBA pro. But that's not the biggest thing so far this season. I just think that's something that we'll see. But yeah, I thought he was really, really good in game one. Game two, just here a couple hours ago against the Kings, I thought he shot poorly, but I liked the shots that he took. So I guess that's a nice way to transition here into game number two. I didn't even mention because I don't really care about box scores in the preseason. The Blazers did lose in the final seconds up in Seattle after a set the Clippers ran that got a Kai Jones lob with 2 seconds to go. Gave them a 1-point lead. Scoot Henderson had a chance to take the lead with his free throws. Missed one, hit the second. But I thank God that the overtime basketball gods of the preseason did not strike, because I did not want to have to drive back later. 3.5 hours is enough, thank you. Game two, Trailblazers Kings. Your starting lineup, the debut of the Portland Trailblazers' other new toy, Deni Avdija. Deni starts with Jeremy, D.A., Scoot, and Toumani Camara maybe being the biggest damn guard we've ever seen. Toumani at the 2 that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. When Anthony Simons comes back, and for the record, Ant just rolled his ankle. I'll be blunt, he told me he's fine. Told me he's fine. Told me if it was the regular season, he'd probably go. So I think he'll play on the game on Friday. I think that's probably what he'll do. I don't know about Wednesday. I don't know how many of the vets are going to play Wednesday because it's against the international team. So, and again, if you want to see 2 projected probably lottery picks, Noah Sengue and Ben Saroff, they are both playing for So, be a cool one to go to. Back to this game. Avdija, Grant, Ayton, Scoot, Toumani were your starters. Deni played 20 minutes, 2 of 8, 1 of 4 from 3, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, 5 points. Not a spectacular debut, but I like the idea of what we got from Deni. It was the pushing in transition, getting into the offense sooner, working as a secondary creator, as a screener. He did knock down above the break 3. The physicality, like you could just see knocking the rust off for sure, I think. But looked the idea and the framework for what he can do and what they're going to hope to get out of him made a ton of sense. Jeremy continued to do Jeremy things. DeAndre Ayton, the big thing again, and we highlighted it in the game 1. Game 2, 5 offensive rebounds, 8 rebounds a night. I thought he was very, very active on the offensive glass, tip-ins, just being a complete nuisance around the rim. I thought it was really interesting, though. You didn't really see a ton of pick and pops. You didn't see really a ton of pick and roll with him and getting him the ball. One of Deni's assists was a spinning half turn, like look over his shoulder, saw DA and went yeet, and just threw that ball over the top to DeAndre Ayton for a lob that he converted. That I thought was fantastic. I was like, ooh, just it wasn't a scripted play. It wasn't out of any particular action. It was just a little bit of motion. Deni recognized it, throw 2 7-footer with crazy bunnies, throw down dunk. I like that. I will say the start of the game and a big portion of that, I would say that first quarter, I thought it was really interesting that Chauncey Billups was not there tonight as the head coach. He was doing his presentation and acceptance for the Hall of Fame. So shout out to Chauncey Billups. It's a big deal. It's super cool. I don't care what you think of him as a coach or whatever. Making it to the Hall of Fame is pretty damn cool. So beyond that, Nate Bjorken was the head coach tonight. And I thought it was interesting. He triggered the offense through Deni and Jeremy to start the game. I want to say 5-7 of the first possessions were run by them and not Scoot initiating. I don't know if that was necessarily a plan. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, because I think that's something they're gonna lean on this year, is having the off-ball initiators try to take some of the burden off of Scoot in particular, just so it's not all 10 eyes on him when he's coming down the floor, because that's part of the problem is defense are gonna take him away, because he's I would say the easiest one to take away right now in that starting lineup as far as the creators, as it were. You try to do it with Ant, he can stretch you out to 30 plus feet and shoot. You can get downhill and finish. You can also create for others. But when Scoot didn't get involved, he was better tonight. The assist to turnover ratio was no longer underwater. 7 assists, 1 turnover. Finished 5 of 13. Again, got to the free throw line. 6 of 8 from the free throw line. 17 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds. I will say his first half, his first quarter and a half was pretty bad. The second half, not great either. I think it was the second quarter when he really, he was 3 for 5 and 5 for 6. He had 11 points in the second quarter. That second half of the second quarter, Scoot really kind of got it going. But outside of that, it was pretty rough. Again, the second quarter was really good. That's the thing, is he's really what you didn't see in Seattle was that glimmer of there's some growth, there's some opportunity. You saw that here in game 2, and I think that's important when you're talking, because again, not all growth is linear. That's the thing, right? It's always one of those you're supposed to do this. It's you're going to go up, you're going to go down, you're going back and forth. It's the nature of that beast, right? Toumani had another really good game. 4 of 5 from the field, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, knocked down another 3. Was a pest defensively, pushed the pace, had a couple of steals. This is where I think you saw the habitual line stepper Toumani. Tried to probably do a little too much off of a live dribble, tried to create a little too much. I think the goal for him is to be a play ender who occasionally does a little bit more, and kind of, again, when he colors outside of those lines, I think I'm not opposed to it. I think he just needs to find the right time. That's the thing. I think he needs to find the right time to do it. I think that pretty much covers the starters again. Roops, poor shooting night, 1 of 6 in the field, 1 of 4 from 3. But again, like I said earlier, I think I really liked the shots that he did take, and how aggressive he was defensively. He got a couple steals. He did have a couple assists, just little things. I was okay, good. Same thing with Chris Murray. I think you saw the outlines of a very solid role player. Donovan Clingan showed more in game 2 than he did in game 1, which is, again, very, very much like Summer League. I think he's one of those guys where, and I think they've mentioned this before, that you don't really have to tell him anything twice. It's okay, yeah, you get it. Didn't get his hand caught in the cookie jar with steals, or fouls, I should say. Finished the night with, 2 fouls? Yeah, he only had 2 fouls in 18 minutes. And again, even with Rob Williams out, you're not seeing Donovan Clingan getting a crap ton of minutes. You're seeing those two guys, Donovan and DeAndre, basically both play 18 minutes. I don't think DC is going to get that many minutes during the season. I think you're looking closer at 10 to 14. And you can see it in some of his shifts when he gets a little huffy-puffy, and it's okay. That's part of the NBA conditioning stuff, but I think that's going to be there. But I thought he was really good. I thought he was really good on the offensive glass. On the 2 offensive rebounds, he did his first double-double, 10 and 10. Did get 2 blocks. Like I really, 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 really like what I saw at Dom tonight. It's very simple but very effective. Stay in your lane, do what you do, be effective. He was 5 of 9 and he was 0 of 3 from 3, which means he was 5 of 6 on 2s. Eat on 2s. The threes are bonus. That's the frosting, man. If you go out there and you eat on 2s, cool. I'm all about that. 100% about that. The Kings are really sloppy tonight. The Blazers did force a ton of turnovers, but the Blazers blew them out. The Kings scored 27, 24, 18, 16. Like, they just couldn't score. Meanwhile, the Blazers just kept scoring until the fourth quarter. They ended up winning by 20. It's just, those don't really matter and or count in the scorebook. So if you're talking about the back end of the Blazers roster, Devontae Graham has gone out there and got to talk to Devontae in Seattle. Really good dude. Like everybody I talked to who's covered him in Charlotte and San Antonio, they were right. Great guy. Great locker room guy. Offered me his dinner because he was going out to dinner. I was like, I'm good, bud. I appreciate you. Thank you. But just a super nice guy. But he has not been as anything. I think that you have to sign him. I think Delano has actually been pretty solid. Knocked down a couple threes, got to the free throw line, got some rebounds. I think if you are gonna keep a 15th man, I think right now it's Delano. It's his size. If Devontae had gone out there and has just been running the offense really well in the limited, it's tough because he's only going to get so many minutes, right? But if he goes out there and he knocks down threes and sets your offense, you kind of go, okay, that's a good break glass in case of emergency point guard. Let's see what we got there. But that hasn't been the case. Jabari Walker, he's been one of the guys been hit with a little bit of a rotation crunch, but kind of been active in the second half. 3 of 3 from 3. If his 3-point shot has come around, number one, I'm happy for him because that man has put in so much work on that. It's been a metric crap ton, to be exact. And he was really frustrated with his results at the end of last season. And he's like, I did so much of this and this. And, it usually takes a while and you just got to stick to it. But you could see it was bothering him. So for him, I hope that because he completely rebuilt his jumper. And it's tough to do that and then not reap the rewards. But if that has come around, he'll find his way in the rotation. One way, it may not be a regular, but he'll find a way there. All right, you guys sent in a bunch of questions, so I want to get to these as quick as I can, okay? Jared Cowley couldn't watch the games. Curious how Scoot looks. His box score in the first game was terrible. His box score in the second game was better, but preseason stats aren't reliable. How's he look very early in year 2? Excuse me, my voice is fried. I'm not hitting the panic button yet because he's 20 years old. But I did raise an eyebrow both tonight or this afternoon and Friday night. There's got to be more. And for me, it's not even the box score stuff. It's having a plan more often than not. And offensively, the defensive stuff, it is what it is. He's young. He'll figure some stuff out. Offensively, he needs to have a plan. More often than not, it looks like he's attacking without a plan. And I think that's the biggest inhibition because guys who can attack without a plan are like the top 1% athletes in the NBA who can figure it out on the fly. Scoot's not that. You have this insane ability to adjust in midair and do all this other stuff, or otherworldly shooting, or Kyrie Irving's finishing. You can freestyle, you can freelance because your skill and your athleticism, your body control is so unique and so special that you can do that even in the NBA. Scoot is not that guy. So he's got to have a better plan of attack. He's also got to be more confident. His drives in Seattle, there were numerous drives where he had almost no confidence on what he was trying to do. And you could see him kind of realize it, like, okay, and then check out of it. That's tough. So that's the thing I'm monitoring more than box score stuff. Very early, not panicking, no alarms hit, but writing notes, certainly. Aussie B at Ozguy Blazers. Doesn't seem like Blazers running many off-ball screens on offense. Is this a misconception? And they run plenty. Seems like it's plenty of dribble handoffs. There is a metric crap ton of DHOs. They are doing that purposefully to get guys kind of moving downhill. Donovan Clingan in particular, that is a real thing. I did run the numbers on it. Hold on, where'd it go? Their off-ball picks, there's a difference of about 3 a game right now through 2 games versus last year. So it's not really anything you should notice. Their total picks, however, like their direct picks, are down about 10. But you could also go personnel. You could talk about different things they're doing. You got pushing in transition. Like those are all things right now. I've taken a few playbook things and jotted them down. I'm not going to do that probably until about 10 games into the season, until there's enough reps and enough tape to kind of go, okay, here's some stuff that they've tried. Here's some stuff that they wanted to try, but not going to really work. I mentioned on Twitter tonight earlier that they got rid of their 77 series, their double drag series, which is like the 2 screeners, 1 pops and 1 dives typically, or 1 pops out to the 3-point line or floats out to the mid-range. They abandoned that last year because they were just so inefficient with their screening. They did run it tonight with Scoot and DA with Deni as the ball handler, if I remember right. No, it was Jeremy. They blitzed Jeremy immediately. But the thing was, on the screens, both DA and Scoot slipped both screens, I believe intentionally. It was either that or they both coincidentally slipped at the same time. But it did result in a wide open 3 for Scoot that he kind of hitched on and went, wasn't great. But there is going to be some changes, I would imagine, because it's the new coaching staff outside of Chauncey for the most part, at least offensively, right? And Nate Bjorkgren was one. We're kind of running things tonight. Bob Bradstreet, when will Ant be back? Did we get a preview of that in the starting lineup? May look like when he gets back with Toumani Camara in it, or are they really going to go small with him and Scoot? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. When Shea was healthy, it was gonna be Ant, Shea, Denny, JG, DA. Like I tried telling everybody that, and still people wanted to argue with it, but it's neither here nor there. With Shea out, it does open some things up. Matisse is dealing with a knee injury, so I don't think it'll be Tease. They could start them both. I wouldn't because, number one, I think being that small is a problem. Number two, it puts Ant off the ball significantly more with a non-shooter. And it kind of makes your bench unit stagger funky. Who really creates in that second unit? It's whoever comes out first and comes back in. I don't necessarily like that. At this point in time, I would start 2. I was going to say I would start Tease. But just kind of easier fit, but 2 can guard guards. So go for it. Start 2. That's what I'd like to see. Will they start Scoop? Probably. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see how the rest of that's a question I'm going to have for folks over the next couple of days is talking around. So we'll see how this one goes. At Adamantium, if Scoot can't figure things out to live up to his hype, do you see him being able to be a valuable bench guard for a team, or does he risk falling out of the rotation in the league? That's too far out. That's like, I know not to single you out. That's just, I've seen multiple people ask some question like that. We're not going down that path till the end of this season unless growth isn't really shown in some level, right? So, but that's on. I think that's further out for sure. Jared Kimmett or at Kimmett Jared, main backer. Thoughts on coaching difference from last year to this year so far? Too early to tell. They've done a few different things, but that's kind of I want a larger sample size of things. Toumani Dawn look real good, methinks. This is from at the Num Project. What did you like most from me? Scoot's penetration power of the rim looks solid to me today. What your thoughts? Yes, Toumani and Donovan are easily the 2 guys who've stood out the most so far. Donovan because he's new, Toumani because he's a dude. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star or even a starter. I just think he's a really good role player who could play on every team in the league. Like, having those guys is useful. Having those guys is valuable, man. Like, I really, really, and personally, I pull for 2 because I like him. He's a good dude. I like talking to him. I'll be blunt. I've got my biases. Everyone does. The funny thing is I like everybody on this team. These guys are all good dudes. But I would say Scoot's penetration and power to the rim, he is at times looking better when he's driving to the rim and exploding. There's a drive against the Kings tonight where he took off, I want to say, like 3 feet too early. And it was like, oh, you're not getting anything. He got caught in the air and he got bailed up by a foul. And I was like, no, you can't. You're not Derrick Rose. You can't take off from there. Like, that's not a thing. So he's got to find his launch point. That's like I think that's one of the biggest things for him this year is he has got to find consistent launch points, because as good of an athlete as he was, he's got to figure that part of it out. At Stevie's mom won. How far into the season before we start hearing Clingan should be starting? And there's already people saying that. The answer is no, because he's a rookie and he's got a guy who's significantly better in front of him, and he's not capable of playing 30-plus minutes yet. But like I get it. People like new and shiny. It's always it's the backup quarterback syndrome. DeAndre Ayton is a 20-10 guy on 60% field goal percentage. 80% for the free throw line, although he doesn't get the line. Like if you look at the guys through NBA history who've done that, it's a short list. So, DC's a good player, and I think he's got a pretty bright future ahead of him. But I don't think he should be starting anytime soon. At Seavers 11, Rob, who has surprised you? Probably Roops. Like, I know the box scores haven't been that, like, indicative, but he's just done little things where it's like, oh, okay. The handle's drastically improved. He's being aggressive defensively without fouling. Trying to think of anything else. As far as surprising, I was hoping Shaden would be surprising. Bummer. But other than that, no, I don't think anything's been too surprising, so to speak. Jabari maybe knocking down the threes the rate he is right now. That might be a thing. But all mild surprise so far. Blazers fan 1987. Any updates on how recovery is going for Ant Sharp? I think we hit those already, but like I said, I think Ant will be ready to go for the last game of the preseason, if not for opening night. And then Shaden, I would imagine the 6 weeks puts him at like the 15th in November. I want to say Thanksgiving just because that gives him ramp up time. I think that's kind of the reality of that, right? Shoulders are weird. I'd rather push it back a little bit than rush it. So, other than that, I think that's all the questions we got. Yeah, that's all the questions we got. We did, surprising thing. We did have a fun little lineup. I mentioned it earlier tonight. Against the Kings, they ran Clingan with 4 other 6'7" dudes. So it was Jabari, Delano, Toumani, and Chris, or Roops and Chris. I can't remember. But I was like, I could get behind 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 7'2", 7'3". That sounds fun. I'm cool with that. So that was a fun little thing. So game on Wednesday, not televised, I don't believe, by anyone. Ratio Farm. I'll be there. So if you see me, come say hi. Appreciate all you guys that said hi in Seattle. It was cool to see y'all make the trips. And then Friday, the game will be on the new K2 family of networks, the first Blazers broadcast of the season. Pretty fun. Maybe we'll have some more on that stuff too. Other than that, I think we're good. Thank you guys for being here. There's 200 plus of you heathens on the live show on 8:30 on Sunday night after a preseason basketball game. So I appreciate you. That's true sickos. That's what we're here for. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Like, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. Do all of the things. Like I said, I'll be back in the swing of this. I had a thing that I was going to do with Scoot that just didn't end up coming together just because I didn't have time. I will do that, and that will come out this week for the Jacked Ramsays Patreon. I already dropped my top 30 first overall big board. I will have a ton of draft coverage. Last year I waited. This year I'm not. I'm just going to give you guys a bunch of draft coverage early on, whether you want it or not, and you can come back in 6 months and go, there's a crap ton of draft coverage to go through to track for the season. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. Take care. Talk soon. Again, like, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things on social media at Danny Marang, at Jacked Ramsays, jackedramsays@gmail.com. You can catch me every day, noon to 3, with my co-host Dusty here on 1080 The Fan. And then, like I said, patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays. Subscribe now, and you can get a hold of all the things that are already there. Take care. Have a wonderful night. Talk soon. Bye.